Hello, thank you for looking in on my video. Thank you for joining me. Anyway, today I want to talk about how things changed in probation, but also I want to talk about things I thought were wrong, scandals, if you like, that occurred that I noticed as a probation officer. And I don't think the media ever caught up on that. I think that they went unreported, some of these scandals. I think they were scandals. So, but the big change was, for me, as a probation officer, was technology came in. But with that came more bureaucracy. And when I first started work in probation, I had much more freedom to work creatively with clients, service users, and to work in positive ways, getting them to achieve positive things and to help them make positive changes to their lives and to help them stop offending. But increasingly, the job became more and more bureaucratic, more form-filling, more about control and surveillance sort of things. And there were big changes, which I think we got wrong. One was recalls back to prison. We used to have to present evidence at court, but now the probation service can recall. And what tends to happen is that the police put tremendous pressure on probation to recall people. The other big change was through politicians. One was when something went wrong, when somebody committed offence. Michael Howard, who was Home Office Minister at the time, brought in that there should be reviews of the management of the case. So what happened was if one of your offenders committed a serious offence, your files were seized and you were held to account on how you managed that case. So that was pretty scary. Big change as well over the years, of course, is that prison sentences have gone up since the 1930s. Over the last 30 years, the number of people in the UK jails has gone up by 70%. By the year 2026, it's predicted that we're going to have 100,000 people in our jails. And 30 years ago, we only had 40,000. The reason for this is that the politicians have been playing this tune. Politicians are responsible for this increase, and it's caused real problems. We've got shortages of prison officers. There's been high staff turnover with the prison officers, and our crumbling prisons just can't cope. Less rehabilitative work has been done, and they've changed it that more people are being supervised coming out of prison now, whereas the emphasis before was trying to stop people becoming offenders and, or nipping early offending in the bud. It's now looking at people coming out of jail, which is almost too late in my view. So the politicians really have caused a lot of problems. The other thing was they severely reduced legal aid, which is grossly unfair, really, and the courts are running really late and badly. Cases there's a big logjam of cases through our courts. So these are all things going wrong, but they're not necessarily scandals, are they? But they're things that need to be worked on. But one of the scandals I came across, and a lot of these really involve the police, and the probation service are minuscule compared to the police, absolutely tiny. And they're pretty much, I feel, the probation service are pretty much the poor relation in the criminal justice system. But one of the things I came across, and it never really hit the media, it did hit one of the local papers where I worked, but what was happening was people were being prosecuted for breach of probation, and the police knew they wouldn't even turn up to court, some of these. So what would happen was, say if I was prosecuting the case, I'd ask the magistrates to issue a warrant for that offender's arrest. And to my astonishment, the police never seemed to execute these warrants, which is quite shameful, really, because if somebody's breaching their probation, for sure they're probably reoffending. But the police didn't see it as a priority, and, you know, it would appear that they kind of stuck these warrants aside, and they never, hardly ever, executed these warrants that I asked to be executed, you know, that the court asked to be executed for breach of probation. And it felt like almost the police in my area felt it was beneath them to do that. And it's just ridiculous. It's and I think at the time they did have the resources to go and arrest these people. And very often they knew where they lived. They had their addresses. So for me, there was no excuse for that. The other scandal that I came across working as a probation officer, that in the 1990s and early 2000s, in my experience, quite a lot of cases, I used to write court reports, for example, and I don't know if it's still happening today, but many previous convictions, quite a lot, had gaps in the records of previous convictions. So much so that I felt it was scandalous, really. And this is serious because we need, you know, in order to assess the risk of somebody reoffending, we need to know what people's previous offences were. But so often, these recorded previous convictions that the police kept and maintained had very serious gaps in them. And for me, you know, and the media's never really discussed this, it's never come to light. And I wonder if the inspectorate of the police pick up on this sort of thing. But I used to write them in the court reports, that there were gaps in so that all the lawyers involved in the cases, the judge would know that there were gaps in the previous convictions. But who, you know, was this issue ever addressed properly? I don't think so. So I really hope they've got it sorted now. The other big scandal, I mean, there are other ones where, you know, I came across one or two corrupt police officers, seriously corrupt, I would say. But the big scandal that I think is out in the public domain, but never really hit the media, was the Metropolitan Police's expenses scandal. It was, I mean, not only did they have scandals, the police, with their expenses, but so did politicians have very, very serious expenses scandal. And many of them just got away with repaying the money that they'd wrongly claimed. But what happened with the Met Police scandal was, it was around about 2006, and I think it highlighted how poorly and naively how badly managed the police were at the time. But the police issued thousands of American Express cards to Met Police officers to use when for lawful expenses, when doing, you know, for example, paying for a train fare or an underground fare or whatever, or legitimate expenses, fuel or whatever, that they used for their credit cards. But there appears to have been very, very poor control and monitoring of these police expenses, in that a lot of the money spent on these American Express cards that should have been for legitimate expenses was spent on other things, on things like gambling debts, on entertainment, going to the theatre, going out to the restaurant, holidays. Now, one police officer one or two were made examples of, One of them spent in the region of £70,000 inappropriately and was prosecuted for that. But the vast majority, nothing happened really. And the auditors stated that they could not account for £5 million of public money misspent by the Met police officers. Now, I haven't really seen that in the newspapers or on the television, but for me, that was an outrageous scandal that is documented, it is written about in various books, but has never really hit prominence within the media. So, you know, all these things go on, and, you know, and there I was, this knackered probation officer working all hours, and we really felt that if anything went wrong on our watch, we'd be hung out to dry, you know. So there you go. So there's lots of things there, but for me, what outrageous scandals. Warrants not being executed, records of previous convictions being outrageously inaccurate, and this huge £5 million that couldn't be accounted for couldn't be accounted as lawful expenses by the Met Police's own auditors. Anyway, I hope you find this interesting, and don't forget to look out for my book. It's called You the Sentencer, and you decide, you get to read some real cases that have been changed or the names changed, and you end up deciding on how you would sentence these people. But I also ask you to think about, how could we as a society stop these people becoming offenders in the first place? And that for me is key. And as you'll see from our other videos, is I think that's where we need to, as a society, put our big efforts in, stopping people becoming offenders in the first place. Anyway, all the very best now, and have a lovely day. Cheers now. Bye-bye.